My name is Brandon Elrich. With Brandon Elrich is so gay. But today, I'm a bit scarier than usual. I don't know if you can hear that noise in the background. Pay no attention to that. It's just a CD of scary sounds. Or is it? Happy Halloween. So I'm going to be uploading this as an audio podcast. So for that purpose, this is episode 39 of my podcast. And I will be reading a short story or two that I wrote. And I hope you enjoy it. Let's see, I only have 5 people in here so far, but I could go ahead and get started anyway. I hope you can all hear me okay. Hello, Ted. Hello, Alyssa. Marla, is it Marla? Marta? Uh, Maria, sorry. Alyssa, Paula, Bradford, Ted. All right. So, the first story I have is oh, got some talking on this one. I thought it was just noises. I may have to turn that down just a skosh. Hello, Onyx Rose. So, the first story I have is called The Hand of Death. The first time I saw the hand of death, it was reaching for my sister. We had taken our father's fishing boat out into the middle of the lake. My sister hopped out for a swim while I remained in the boat. She was wearing her life jacket at my mother's insistence and hadn't waded very far from the vessel when I saw the hand reaching out of the water toward her. Hannah! I screamed as I pointed at the hand. What? She asked fearfully. She turned and could obviously not see the hand. I reached out and grabbed the back of her life jacket, pulled with all my might until she was safely in the boat. What? She said again. What was it, Tommy? I looked back at the hand just as it was disappearing beneath the surface. I I saw I saw something, I stammered. Though I was sure of what I saw, it just didn't make sense. I couldn't bring myself to say it aloud. My sister recounted the incident to our mother later. It must have been a big fish, I explained. At the end of that same day, my father related some news to my mother. Mac Wilson died today, he said. My mother gasped. What happened? He was fishing on the west side of the lake and apparently had a heart attack, my father explained. I felt a chill at the coincidental occurrence, but reasoned that the two events were surely unrelated. That is, until I saw the hand again. It was about a year later when we were visiting my grandmother at her home. She was battling cancer and was sent home under hospice care. She seemed in good spirits as we visited with her at her bedside. Gary, she said to my father, fill that bird feeder just yonder, will you? She pointed out the window to a half-filled feeder hanging from a tree branch just a few yards from the house. Yes, Mama, he replied. I'll fill it on our way out. She nodded her approval. Not long after, my grandmother was starting to nod off, so we said our goodbyes. As we were exiting the bedroom, I looked back at her. The hospice nurse was standing on one side of the bed, but suddenly there was a very dark shadow on the other side of the bed, and a hand was reaching out toward my grandmother. I gasped and began to speak as the bedroom door closed. Shh, my mother said. She needs a rest. A year had passed since the incident on the lake, but I distinctly recognized the hand. The figure to which it belonged was obscured by the dark shadow, but I clearly saw the hand itself. Moments later, the hospice nurse came rushing down the hallway just as we reached the front door. She motioned for my father to follow her back to the bedroom. My grandmother had passed away. There were other instances throughout the years when I saw the hand reaching toward me. I was a teenager when some friends and I were canoeing on a river in southern Missouri. Several rope swings hung from trees along the banks that extended over the water, and many cliffs were perfect for diving. I stood at the edge of one particular cliff, about to jump, but as I looked down at the river, a familiar sight appeared. As the hand emerged from the water, my legs began to shake. "Come on, Tom," one of my friends shouted behind me. I refused to jump, despite the jeering and taunting of the other boys. "This doesn't look like a safe spot," I used as my excuse. "Well, if you're too chicken," Todd began, and then, before I could stop him, he ran and jumped from the edge as the other boys clapped and hollered. We looked down at the water to watch him emerge before the next boy jumped, but he didn't resurface. We all scrambled down the hill to the water. We were all calling his name, taking turns swimming beneath the water to search. It was a slow-moving river, fortunately, so it wasn't difficult to dive under without being swept away by the current. "It's not funny anymore," Chad called out nervously. "Look," Garrett said, pointing downriver. Todd was floating face down against a large branch protruding from the water. We all splashed frantically as we swam to him, but as we approached, we could see that the back of his head was soaked with blood. We worked together to pull him to the bank. Chad tried performing CPR, at least what he knew of it from watching TV. We all knew it was in vain. I knew it more certainly than anyone. I carried guilt with me for years afterward and chided myself for not being more insistent about picking a different place to jump. Could I have made him heed my warnings? Would death have chosen someone else anyway? I wasn't sure of the rules, but I know that I should have been the one who died that day. These incidents made me worry for my sister as well. I saved her from dying, though she was unaware of it at the time. Would death keep coming for her? Not long after she graduated from high school, I finally worked up the nerve to confide in her what really happened on the lake when we were younger, which she could barely recall. She didn't believe me about the hand at first, but she saw the seriousness in my demeanor. "Listen," she said, "we all die. It's one of the few certainties in this world. You can't spend your life worrying about it. It's going to happen to me just like it'll happen to everyone else. And even if you can prevent it, you can't be with me all the time." I wasn't with her, in fact, when she was in college and was involved in a car accident that claimed her life. The car accident happened so quickly. If I had been there, would I have seen the hand in time? Instead of berating myself, I was proud that I was directly responsible for many years she wouldn't have experienced otherwise. In recent years, I've seen the hand of death more frequently, and I know that one day I will not be on my guard. I can't escape death forever. None of us can. I know that one day I'll be unsuspecting when it wraps its cold gray fingers around my throat. All right, I have one more that is another original of mine I wrote a few years ago. This one's called "A Picture is Worth 1,000 Warnings." I was visiting a small village in Italy. I can't tell you the name of it, but it's not that I don't remember. I'm just not allowed to mention the name or how to get there. I stumbled upon it by accident, really, so I'm not sure I could tell you anyway. I was exploring the countryside, camera in hand, snapping photos of the beauty that the Italian landscape boasted. I took a fork in the road that seemed less traveled than the other options. Frost inspired, I'm sure. The path leading into the village was too narrow for any cars, but since I was on foot, it didn't matter. I came upon two pillars constructed loosely of stones. There was no sign with the name of the village, population, or anything of the sort, but only a handwritten sign on a piece of wood that read, "No cameras allowed." My fluency in Italian assisted me greatly during my ventures. I instinctively looked down at the apparatus hanging from my neck and shrugged. "What are they going to do? Arrest me?" I asked aloud. I've been known to bend or break the errant rule. Maybe the sign was meant to deter reporters from exploiting the quaint and remote village. Well, my photographs would be for my personal collection of memories, so these camera-shy occupants need not worry. As I passed by houses and other buildings, I noticed the extraordinary artwork on the outsides of the walls. Every one was so realistically done, I had never seen anything comparable in any museum or gallery I'd ever visited. They were all representations of people of different ages engaged in everyday tasks. I took a photograph, my first infraction thus far, of one such example, of two children with a bicycle leaned against the wall as if they were riding it. Some illustrations, however, portrayed individuals with expressions of great shock or fear. The artist was able to capture the visage so expertly, I could almost feel the emotion that their faces were conveying. The village was sparsely populated. I had seen only a couple of people, both of whom gave me wary looks and then quickly walked away. As I strolled toward a fountain in what seemed to be the middle of the village, I saw a young female toddler playing in the dirt. I squatted down to get a better angle and grabbed my camera to adjust the settings. As I began to raise the camera to my face, I heard a blood-curdling scream, causing me to drop my camera and stare at a woman race to the child, scoop her up, and just as quickly race back into the house. I was stunned and baffled as I stood up a little shakily. "You there!" A voice came from behind me. I turned to see an old woman beckoning me toward her home. I approached hesitantly and said hello. Without responding to my greeting, she barked, "Those things are not allowed in this place." She pointed at the camera. "I'm sorry, I didn't realize," I lied, pretending as if I hadn't seen the sign. "It's only for my own collection." "Doesn't matter the reason," she said gruffly. "Not allowed." "May I ask why?" I asked, trying to sound contrite. She squinted and looked me over and then gestured toward a chair directly across from the old rocker she was occupying. I accepted the offer and waited for her explanation. "I don't normally tell this story to strangers," she began, "but you remind me of someone." She sat back, closed her eyes, and sighed. "It's been just over 25 years now, but for many of us, it was only yesterday." A rather enigmatic beginning, but I remained expressionless and waited for her to go on. "There was a young man named Gabriel who grew up in this village," she continued. "He was a quiet lad, and we knew, even when he was a boy, that he was different than the other boys." My mind immediately started working, wondering what difference to which she could be referring. Mentally handicapped? Physically impaired? A sociopath? He didn't have many friends and didn't spend much time with the other boys. He was very handsome, and all the girls had crushes on him, she reflected with a bit of whimsy. He always got embarrassed when any of us suggested that he should ask one of them on a date or even go on a walk. He never seemed to be interested in any of them. We thought it was on account of his being so shy. She closed her eyes and shook her head slowly. The year he turned 21, a young man named Jackson moved into the village. He was just a couple years older than Gabriel, and they immediately became friends. For the first time, it appeared as if he was coming out of his shell. For the first time, it seemed like he was happy. It was like new life had been breathed into Gabriel's soul. She paused for a few moments, and I wondered whether she would keep going. "One day," she said with a quavering voice, "one of the men of the village caught the two of them in the woods. They were holding hands and kissing. His difference was then revealed. He wasn't just shy, he was gay. Paul, the man who found them together, told several people what he had seen, In a town this size, it didn't take long before everyone knew. Many people were angry, especially some of the men. They decided that something like this could not go on. Gabriel grew up here and was one of our own, but they held no allegiance to the newcomer. A group of 4 men went to Jackson's home and dragged him outside of the town, and her voice faltered as tears rolled down her lined, sun-beaten face. She wiped them away with streams of water with her hand, and very soon I was doing the same. I was familiar with stories of a similar nature, unfortunately. I don't know if they intended to kill him, she said, but such was the result. Gabriel was forced to leave town, but he was so very angry. He vowed that he would get even with the town. He would make them pay for what they did. It was rumored that Gabriel consulted with a woman from another village who practiced witchcraft. A year later, he returned to the town with a camera. We were all surprised to see him return. He went first to Paul's house, and then to the homes of the other men who had a hand in killing Jackson. Screams were heard from inside the homes of the men, but were quickly silenced. We didn't realize what was happening until it was too late. What was happening? I blurted out, too curious to wait for her to explain in her own time. He went around town taking photographs of anyone he saw, she explained. But when he snapped a picture, the people disappeared. All that was left of them was an image imprinted on whatever was behind them. Most were plastered on walls on the outsides of buildings, inside the barn or shop where they were working, a few on trees. When people saw what was happening, they ran in fear or went into hiding. I ran to him and begged him to stop. This is not who you are, I told him. It will not bring back Jackson. He started sobbing and reluctantly gave the camera to me. He left town and has never returned. The houses of the 4 men have been abandoned. No one wants to live in them now. Weren't you afraid? I asked. What if he had snapped your picture? She shook her head. He loved his mother, she said. I loved him too and still do. I was willing to take that risk. What happened to the camera? I couldn't help but ask. She looked at me pointedly and said, It's time for my afternoon nap. Then she rose wearily and headed into her home. In the doorway, she turned and said, Do not mention this place to anyone you know. Then she closed the door. I stood dumbfounded and then slowly made my way back down the road from whence I came. As I passed by the figures on the walls, they took on a new message, a warning. I now felt them eerily watching me. You can hear stories throughout history of groups of people, races, tribes, who have been discriminated against and the suffering they endured. The impact of their torment and even their deaths should serve as warnings not to perpetuate such hatred and bigotry. Yet, history continues to repeat itself. Stories may be heard and then forgotten, but a picture is worth 1,000 warnings. Well, those are my two original stories. I had thought that I might read The Raven by Edgar Allan Poe, if you want to hear that. Obviously, it's not original, but I can read it for you anyway. It's one of my favorite poems. I love Edgar Allan Poe. All right, here we go. The Raven by Edgar Allan Poe. Once upon a midnight dreary, while I pondered weak and weary over many a quaint and curious volume of forgotten lore, while I nodded, nearly napping, suddenly there came a tapping, as of someone gently rapping at my chamber door. "'Tis some visitor," I muttered, tapping at my chamber door. "Only this and nothing more." Ah, distinctly I remember it was in the bleak December, and each separate dying ember wrought its ghost upon the floor. Eagerly I wished the morrow, vainly I had sought to borrow from my books surcease of sorrow, sorrow for the lost Lenore, for the rare and radiant maiden whom the angels name Lenore, nameless here forevermore. And the silken, sad, uncertain rustling of each purple curtain thrilled me, filled me with fantastic terrors never felt before. So that now, to still the beating of my heart, I stood repeating, "'Tis some visitor entreating entrance at my chamber door. Some late visitor entreating entrance at my chamber door. This it is and nothing more." Presently my soul grew stronger, hesitating then no longer. "Sir," said I, "or madam, truly your forgiveness I implore. But the fact is I was napping, and so gently you came rapping, and so faintly you came tapping, tapping at my chamber door, that I scarce was sure I heard you." Here I opened wide the door. Darkness there, and nothing more. Deep into that darkness peering, long I stood there, wondering, fearing, doubting, dreaming dreams no mortal ever dared to dream before. But the silence was unbroken, and the stillness gave no token, and the only word there spoken was the whispered word, "Lenore." This I whispered, and an echo murmured back the word, "Lenore." Merely this, and nothing more. Back into the chamber turning, all my soul within me burning, soon again I heard a tapping, somewhat louder than before. "Surely," said I, "surely that is something at my window lattice. Let me see then what thereat is, and this mystery explore. Let my heart be still a moment, and this mystery explore. 'Tis the wind, and nothing more." Open here I flung the shutter, when many a flirt and flutter in there stepped a stately raven of the saintly days of yore. Not the least obeisance made he, not a minute stopped or stayed he, but with mien of lord or lady perched above my chamber door, perched upon a bust of Pallas, just above my chamber door, perched and sat, and nothing more. Then this ebony bird beguiling my sad face into smiling, by the grave and stern decorum of the countenance it wore. "Though thy crest be shorn and shaven, thou," I said, "art sure no craven, ghastly, grim, and ancient raven, wandering from the nightly shore. Tell me what thy lordly name is on the night Plutonian shore." Quoth the raven, "Nevermore." Much I marveled this ungainly fowl to hear discourse so plainly, though its answer little meaning, little relevancy bore. For we cannot help agreeing that no living human being ever yet was blessed with seeing bird above his chamber door, bird or beast upon the sculptured bust above his chamber door, with such a name as Nevermore. But the raven, sitting lonely on the placid bust, spoke only that one word, as if his soul in that one word he did outpour. Nothing farther than he uttered, not a feather than he fluttered, till I scarcely more than muttered, "Other friends have flown before. On the morrow he will leave me, as my hopes have flown before." Then the bird said, "Nevermore." Startled at the stillness broken by replies so aptly spoken, "Doubtless," said I, "what it utters is its only stock and store, caught from some unhappy master, whom unmercifully disaster followed fast and followed faster, till his songs one burden bore, till the dirges of his hope that melancholy burden bore of nevermore." But the raven still beguiling all my fancy into smiling, straight I wheeled a cushioned seat in front of bird and bust and door. Then upon the velvet sinking, I betook myself to linking fancy unto fancy, thinking what this ominous bird of yore, what this grim, ungainly, ghastly, gaunt, and ominous bird of yore meant in croaking "Nevermore." This I sat engaged in guessing, but no syllable expressing, to the fowl whose fiery eyes now burned into my bosom's core. This and more I sat divining, with my head at ease reclining on the cushion's velvet lining that the lamplight gloated o'er, but whose velvet violet lining with the lamplight gloating o'er she shall press, nevermore. Then methought the air grew denser, perfumed from an unseen censer, swung by seraphim whose footfalls tinkled on the tufted floor. Wretch, I cried, thy God hath lent thee, by these angels he has sent thee, respite, and nepenthe from thy memories of Lenore. Quaff this kind nepenthe, and forget this lost Lenore. Quoth the raven, nevermore. Prophet, said I, thing of evil, prophet still, if bird or devil, whether tempter sent, or whether tempest tossed thee here ashore, desolate yet all undaunted, on this desert land enchanted, on this home by horror haunted, tell me truly, I implore, is there balm in Gilead? Tell me, I implore. Quoth the raven, nevermore. Prophet, said I, thing of evil, prophet still, if bird or devil, by that heaven that bends above us, by that God we both adore, tell this soul with sorrow laden, if within the distant Aidenn it shall clasp a sainted maiden, whom the angels name Lenore. Clasp a rare and radiant maiden, whom the angels name Lenore. Quoth the raven, nevermore. Be that word our sign of parting, bird or fiend, I shrieked, upstarting. Get thee back into the tempest and the night's Plutonian shore. Leave no black plume as a token of that lie thy soul hath spoken. Leave my loneliness unbroken. Quit the bust above my door. Take thy beak from out my heart, and take thy form from off my door. Quoth the raven, nevermore. And the raven, never flitting, still is sitting on the pallid bust of Pallas, just above my chamber door. And his eyes have all the seeming of a demon's that is dreaming, and the lamplight o'er him streaming throws his shadow on the floor. And my soul from out that shadow that lies floating on the floor shall be lifted nevermore. Thank you, Cynthia. Thank you for all the hearts. Thank you, Julie. Love it. One of my most faves. Yes. One of mine too. I love the darkness and the emotion in it. Well, that's all I got. I just watched, let's see, I just watched a Poe documentary. Oh, that's cool. I'll have to check that out. I haven't seen any documentaries of Edgar Allan Poe. Happy Halloween, Kitty Sue. And happy Halloween to everyone else. I appreciate you joining and listening to my readings. Yeah, that's all I got today. I appreciate you coming in. I guess I'll sign off of here. Excellent reading. It was fun. Thank you, Julie. Thanks, Ted. You're welcome. Thanks, Laggy and Cynthia and everyone else. Lisa Joy. Thanks, everybody, for joining me.
If you're not already subscribed to me, I would appreciate a subscription, especially if you become a paid subscriber, because I am a freelance writer and I do this as part of the way I earn a living. So if you like my content and you have the means to support me, I would really appreciate that. And I guess until next time, I hope you enjoy these spooky stories. and I will see you later. Say goodbye, Zach.